My name is Mr. Warren, and I'm the Director of Human Resources here at Achievement House Cyber Charter School. What I want to review with you today are some standard employment laws. These are both state and federal employment laws, and there's actually 12 that I'm going to review with you today. The first thing that's important are these are laws that everyone should be aware of, so what's really important is you need to have them posted in an open space where employees can readily see it. You can't be hiding these in a closet or anything like that. So companies will put it like in a break room, maybe a kitchen like we have, a kitchen lunchroom, and again, just something that people can see them. So what I'd like to do is actually just review these and talk briefly about each one of them. And again, they're both federal and state, and these are laws just about every employer needs to follow. The first one, and you've probably heard of this one before, but it's the minimum wage. And there's a federal minimum wage, which is $7.25. And there's also state wages. Pennsylvania could do something different, but actually Pennsylvania's state wage is also $7.25, and that is actually posted right here. And for the most part, that's what employers are at least at minimum to pay. There can be some exceptions. If you ever like work in a restaurant, and the wait staff, waitresses, waiters, they actually can be paid a lower amount, but they'll get tips. And the requirement is that at least between their rate of pay and the tips, it should at least come up to this minimum wage. Just to give you a sense, again, Pennsylvania is still at $7.25. The state of Delaware is actually at $8.25, and New Jersey is $8.60. In fact, 3/4 of the states around the country have a higher rate than the federal. The second one I want to talk about is the Family and Medical Leave Act. This is one of the few laws that it does require, it's based on employer size. So as long as an employer has at least 50 employees working within 75 miles of an office, they must offer this act. And essentially what it is, again, family and medical leave. What it means is you can take a leave from your job for birth of a child, adoption of a child, what's called bonding with a child. In addition, for health, if you have a serious health condition or someone within your immediate family, parent, child, has a serious health. This is a law that basically protects your job. It's not paid, but again, it allows you to go out and address these issues, keeps your job intact so that you can return. And the one other thing is to be eligible for this, you have to work a minimum of a year and roughly 25 hours a week for that entire year to be eligible to participate. The third one I want to talk about is actually called the Employee Polygraph Protection. And let me actually read it to you. It says, this act prohibits most private, and that's the key word, private employers from using a lie detector test for pre-employment screening during the course of employment. State employees, government employees, they're not protected under this act, so they could. That's not to say they will, they could. And there's some other private, such as those who would be like security service, the armored cars, guards. They could have that as being part of the employment process, but then again, the employer would have to know that. Let's jump down to, now this is called workers' compensation. If you ever get injured, an accident on the job, it doesn't happen very often here. We have an office, a school. Sometimes there may be a trip and a fall. That could happen, but it's very, very rare. You're usually going to see it in warehouses, manufacturing firms, hospitals, where they're lifting a lot of patients and pull their back. But basically, this insurance it's like no harm, no foul. You get hurt, that's okay. But insurance is basically if you lose any time, insurance is going to pay your wages. Oh, and you maybe have to have some medical coverage. Insurance is going to pay for that as well. So that's workers' compensation. The next one down here is actually the Pennsylvania Human Relations Act. It's actually Pennsylvania's side of this equal opportunity, no discrimination. I mean, essentially, let me just read it. The Human Relations Act is to prevent and eliminate unlawful discriminatory practices in employment because of race, color, religion, ancestry, age over 40, sex, national origin, job responsibility, or disability. So it's just Pennsylvania's way of talking about, again, a much larger federal law that I will talk about. This third one down here is actually one that I wasn't really aware of until a few years ago. It's actually a public accommodations provisions, and it basically says any public entity or building, a restaurant, a retail store, is it's unlawful to discriminate against any person in the use of employment such as a public accommodation, the race of sex, religion, ancestry, like all the other ones I had named. But other ones that you might not think about is like a guide dog for someone who's blind. They have access to that too. An employer says, you can't bring that dog in here. If they have a bona fide reason for it, they can do that. So again, that's something that's been in play, and a lot of people just don't know about that. Okay? Let's go up top here. Now this is commonly known as Your Rights under USERRA. It's kind of a long acronym for the Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act. So what does that actually mean? USERRA protects the job rights of individuals who voluntarily or involuntarily leave employment positions to undertake military service or certain types of service in the national disaster medical system. USERRA also protects employers from discriminating against past or present members of uniformed services and applicants to uniformed services. Kind of a mouthful, but again, it's to protect those who have served. The next law that I want to go to is really the major one that has been established for our country, and it is essentially the Equal Employment Opportunity Law. And let me just read it to you. Applicants to and employees of most private employers, state, local governments, educational institutions such as us, employment agencies, and labor organizations are protected under federal law from discrimination on the following bases. And you've heard these before: race, color, religion, sex, national origin. Disability, age, like we said before, anyone over 40. Genetics, actually, you're not allowed to do genetics testing, which is becoming a little bit more vogue. Any kind of retaliation against a person who may be put a charge of discrimination. You can't do that. So, again, this is probably almost sets everything else in place. So that's a real key law that I think it's been around since 64. Yeah, 63. The next law that I want to talk about is the unemployment compensation. And essentially, and UC is a common acronym, the UC law can provide you with income during periods when you're either partially or totally unemployed through no fault of your own. So again, if you lose your job, and again, it's not your fault, you got laid off, there is insurance out there to help you pay for that. It's not going to be necessarily the same amount that you may have earned in the job, but it's there to help you to, at least have some money coming in while you're looking for another position. Down here we have the child labor law, and there's actually different kinds of laws, and it really has to do when a child can work, and that's between the age of 14 and 15. There's also different levels between 16 and 17. It has to be like after school, but it can't be too late. There's a lot to it, and actually I would like to, since a lot of the students, I have talked about this in Mrs. Boyd's class. This is something that I would like to actually just talk more about. Again, child's rights, which you should be aware of. The next one is it's a little tiny one down here, but it's abstract of equal pay law. So it prohibits discrimination by any employer in any place of employment between employees based on sex by paying wages to an employee that are a rate less than the rate to other employees of the opposite sex for the work under equal, that's an important word, equal conditions, on the jobs which require equal skills. Provides that variation in payment of wages is not prohibited when based on seniority, training, merit increases. The system is not discrimination on basis of sex. You hear that a lot, and it's always an issue that a lot of employers must pay attention to. We've got a couple more to go. Okay, this job safety and health, otherwise known as OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Basically, everybody has the right to work in a safe workplace. And if you raise a health safety concern, there's not going to be any retaliation against it. Again, sometimes in office buildings, those kind of issues don't come up as much. But certainly, again, maybe in a manufacturing or other, where there may be much more safety concerns, it's something that employers. But again, all employers must provide an opportunity for their employees to work in a safe environment. And I think actually that's it, because it gets me back down to the Pennsylvania minimum wage. Okay, I hope this was informative. You're going to start hearing certainly a lot more information as we go through the year and the years about employment laws in